In 249 BC, off the coast of Sicily, a Roman consul named Publius Claudius Pulcher stood on the deck of his warship, preparing a surprise attack on the Carthaginian fleet. But first, standard military procedure required him to consult the sacred chickens. Priests scattered grain on the deck. If the birds eagerly ate, the gods approved of the battle. On this morning, the chickens refused. Furious that a cage full of birds was about to block his entire naval campaign, Pulcher reportedly grasped the cages and hurled them straight into the Mediterranean Sea, declaring, "If they will not eat, let them drink." He launched his attack anyway. Within hours, Pulcher lost almost his entire fleet. When he returned to Rome, he was put on trial, not for military incompetence, but for impiety. The Roman state treated his disrespect toward a flock of chickens more seriously than the destruction of an armada. For thousands of years across major ancient empires, the chicken was practically untouchable. It was a divine messenger, a spiritual oracle, and a model of martial bravery. It was everything except a meal. Compare that reverence to today, where roughly 74 billion chickens are slaughtered globally every single year. The bird that generals once consulted before going to war is now the cheapest, most mass-produced commodity animal on the planet. To understand how a sacred oracle became a grocery store staple, you have to look at its origin. The core ancestor of every chicken on Earth is the red junglefowl, a small, shy, colorful bird that roosts in trees and scurries along the forest floors of Southeast Asia. Around 1500 BC, farmers in this region began planting dry rice. These open fields of scattered grain proved irresistible to the junglefowl living at the forest edge. The birds ventured out of the trees, gradually grew comfortable around humans, and settled into a slow mutual arrangement. As these early chickens spread westward along maritime trade routes into the Mediterranean, they traveled as highly prized exotics. They were kept for cockfighting, for marking the hours of the day with their crowing, and as spiritual companions, frequently buried alongside the dead in European Iron Age rituals. The chicken's initial journey into human civilization was built entirely on a spiritual connection, making the industrial path it eventually took deeply ironic. Through the early 20th century, the idea of eating chicken every day made no economic sense. Raising them specifically for meat was highly inefficient. They were small and grew slowly. A whole roasted bird on the table was a rare luxury reserved for Sunday dinners, and the meat actually cost more per pound than beef. The shift started in the 1940s. The Great Depression had driven the cost of animal feed down, while World War II created a massive urgent demand for protein to feed troops overseas. Farmlands on the eastern seaboard began testing out dedicated meat-specific flocks. But the real turning point was a grocery store PR stunt. In 1945, the A&P supermarket chain sponsored a nationwide competition called the Chicken of Tomorrow to replace the existing birds with a version that grew faster, larger, and with significantly plumper breast meat. The scale of this contest was staggering. Hundreds of breeders from across the country submitted thousands of eggs to a central facility. The chicks were hatched anonymously, raised side by side in tightly controlled conditions, and meticulously judged on the quantity and quality of their meat. The top performers included a muscular, compact bird bred by Henry Saglio, a teenage farmer from Connecticut. His specific crossbred bloodlines, along with the other top winners, established the genetic foundation for billions of the commercial broilers we eat today. That single corporate competition effectively sidelined millennia of natural evolution, shifting the chicken from an animal into a highly scalable agricultural technology. Armed with these new genetics, the business rapidly consolidated. Throughout the 1950s, giant corporations established vertical integration, swallowing up every single stage of production, from hatcheries to feed mills to distribution networks, under one corporate roof. Next came the contract grower system. These massive companies provided the chicks and the feed, while individual farmers provided the land and the labor. This structure allowed the corporations to control the genetics while shifting all the financial risk onto the farmers. Finally, the processing itself left the farm. Slaughterhouses transformed into government-approved factory floors, utilizing endless conveyor belts and assembly line evisceration to pack staggering volumes of meat in a matter of hours. To push this machinery even faster, operators began mixing antibiotics like tetracycline directly into the feed. They weren't treating sick animals. They were routinely dosing healthy flocks to artificially accelerate their growth rate. These combined economic efficiencies and chemical interventions drove the price of chicken meat below that of beef for the first time, finalizing its transition from a Sunday luxury to an everyday mass-market commodity. A 2005 University of Alberta experiment raised 1957, 1978, and 2005 chicken strains identically. At 56 days, the 1957 bird weighed 900 grams, while the 2005 bird hit 4,200 grams, 4 times larger. Meanwhile, market weight growth time collapsed from 112 days to just 47. But that speed comes with a steep physical cost. The skeletal system and internal organs of a modern broiler simply cannot keep pace with the unnatural rate at which its engineered breast muscle expands. The rapid muscle growth radically shifts their center of gravity, putting immense stress on joints that were never built for this load. Studies estimate that up to 30% of commercial broilers suffer from leg lameness, and sudden cardiac arrest is a known industry problem, leaving millions of ostensibly healthy birds to simply collapse on warehouse floors. We achieved the goal of cheap mass-market protein, but we did it by engineering a biological machine that frequently struggles to even survive the weight of its own body. In the rush toward maximum efficiency, we also erased incredible genetic diversity. Over 50% of the world's ancestral chicken breeds were wiped out in just a few decades, as industrial production completely took over. Yet, unlike almost every other domesticated livestock species, the original wild ancestor didn't go extinct. You can still walk into the forests of Southeast Asia and find the red junglefowl living exactly as it did 3,500 years ago. It remains an agile, slender bird that flies into the canopy to roost at night and lives for years, standing in stark contrast to the heavy, short-lived, genetically homogeneous industrial product confined to a windowless shed. From a revered Roman oracle, buried alongside humans, consulted before wars, to a shrink-wrapped supermarket commodity, is perhaps the most extreme physical and cultural reinvention of any animal in history. It shows exactly how ruthlessly we are willing to reshape nature to fit our exact desires.